Okay, I think Leslie is already here. Okay. Nah, wait, Leslie, I'm checking the YouTube live. Yes, we already live there. Oke. Oke, selamat pagi ibu-ibu semua. Tepat di jam 10, kita akan memulai sesi kita di pagi hari ini bersama dengan Leslie, yang sebelum saya akan introduce dan menyerahkan kepada beliau, ada beberapa hal dulu yang ingin saya bagikan sebelum kita akan masuk ke dalam sesi dan materi training kita di pagi hari ini. Yang pertama adalah, ibu-ibu semua, kita saat ini live di YouTube yang Living Indonesia, sehingga dengan demikian apabila ada yang mungkin masih mau masuk bergabung tapi sudah full bisa masuk ke YouTube-nya yang Living Indonesia karena kita live di sana. Lalu kemudian yang kedua, nanti apabila ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan, saya akan pilih Bu Indri ada di sini akan memilih dari kolom chat di Zoom call. Jadi akan ada beberapa pertanyaan yang akan dipilih oleh Indri, 3 sampai 5 pertanyaan yang nanti akan dijawab langsung oleh Leslie. Yang ketiga, saya akan karena ini tidak ada subtitle, ibu-ibu semua, saya akan usahakan untuk menuliskan poin-poin dalam bentuk closed caption. Jadi saat ini silahkan Ibu di bagian bawah Zoom itu ada closed caption, silahkan di on closed captionnya, subtitlenya, supaya nanti ibu-ibu bisa melihat nggak full subtitle, tapi at least ada highlight-highlight yang akan kita bisa sama-sama mengerti yang sedang dibicarakan oleh pembicara di setiap presentasinya. Oke, so itu aja yang ingin saya sampaikan di awal sebelum kita akan masuk ke sesi training kita di pagi hari ini. Leslie, we already have 166 person here. So we want to welcome you and first of all, we want to thank you so much for sharing us about this material because ibu-ibu semua di sini, Leslie saat ini menjabat sebagai Senior Director untuk Global Education Team dan beliau juga memiliki gelar doktor yaitu PhD di bidang filsafat spiritual dan metafisika. Beliau juga ahli herbal klinis, spiritual healer berlisensi internasional. Jadi Leslie juga memiliki beberapa sertifikasi spiritual healer international dan juga kemudian herbalist, clinical herbalist. Dan beliau juga memiliki degree di bidang PhD. So Leslie, we all know here that you work closely also with Gary. So Leslie will be the perfect one to tell us about Gary Young legacy, about Gary's vision, about Gary's mission, about Gary's passion, and what makes us yang membuat kita sangat berbeda dari perusahaan MLM lain, dari direct selling lain. Kenapa sih kita berbeda? Pasti ada alasannya di balik semua itu, terutama dari Gary Young. So now, let us, if you turn on your video, you can just clap your hand and welcoming Leslie Louis, Senior Director of Global Education. Your time, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for inviting me to share with you this evening and to spend some time with you. It is so wonderful to see all of your faces. I see some familiar faces. It's been a long time since I've been to Jakarta, but I see some good friends who I miss and who I enjoy seeing. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for joining this session. I was so excited when Lisa called and asked me if I would be available to share a little bit about the topic that I'm going to talk about tonight, because it's such an important part of my life. It's such an important part of my own journey. As Lisa mentioned, I do work with herbs in a clinical setting, and I also work in education. I work in energy healing and spirituality. And so my journey has been one that, of course, like all of us, is very important to me, but I feel really blessed and so lucky to find Young Living that has been a perfect match with who I am and what I want to do in the world. So just to get started, I'll do a little introduction of myself, but before I do that, I like a soft introduction, right? So we'll start with someone or something that we are all familiar with as we get ourselves a little bit more comfortable for our time together. If you have your oils close to you, I'd love it if you could just go ahead and grab one. It doesn't matter if single blend, if it's a herb or a fruit or a flower, whatever you have close, handy. Gary used to say, the best oil is the one that you've got with you. So go ahead and grab an oil that you've got handy. Oh, it's so good to see all of your faces too. I've missed traveling so much. So show me which bottle you brought. Oh, okay, as I scroll through and see what you've got with you. Sacred Mountain Farhan, I love that one. That is one of my all-time favorites. Oh, I see, that looks like pine to me, citrus fresh. Oh, so many good ones. See, I already feel like we're friends now, all of us, even those of you who I haven't met yet, because we have so many friends in common, right? So you can open the bottle, and I've been talking a lot today, so please excuse my voice, but open the bottle, you can take a smell, or you can do what I like to do, just allow a few drops to fall into your hand. And I think that especially as we're learning together from around the globe, it's really important for us to come together in unity. So much different for me to not be in the same room with you when I'm teaching, but we can still come together in unity. We can still all be on the same page as we share oils and inhale together. And enjoy the fragrance of these oils that are so important to us. So I'm so glad so many of you are here on Zoom with me because I can see your comments. So whatever oil you picked, I want you to put into the chat some of the words that you would use to describe the aroma of what you selected. You don't have to tell me what oil it is, just type in some descriptive word. How would you describe the oil? And I'm gonna keep breathing as you guys are typing those in. And doesn't that, we have so many different kinds of noses, right? Maybe you have a very scientific or clinical nose and you have the word, oh, I smell a lot of terpenes, or I've got a lot of phenols in the oil that I am smelling. Or maybe we got a baker's nose and you're saying, oh, it's so sweet, so refreshing. I see a lot of really good descriptive words. I like to use words that remind me of serene and heavenly. Clarity, sweet, courageous. I love that. Lisa, we got the same one. So there's so many, hey, trainers, we're like a family around the world as well. There's so many descriptive words. I like to think of words that are similar to the way I would describe my friends. A lot of times I describe oils with a personality like, oh, happy, motivated, yes, similar to that, uplifting, or maybe calm, grounding, grounded. When I inhale, I also can smell, oh, so many of the, I've got a blend, maybe you got a single or a blend. Can you smell, if you've got a blend, several of the different botanicals? I also, so if it were daylight here, it's actually 9 p.m. at night for me, so I can't show you out my window, but I live in kind of, it's a small dwelling. It's not tiny, but it's not giant. I live in a small house in the city. So if I show you out my back window here, you can see 6 different houses. I can just see the back of their houses. If you look out my front door, 13 different houses all in a row, very tight together, very close with my neighbors. And I think it's so incredible that even though I have a kind of small living space, with these little bottles, I'm able to have my own almost secret garden inside of the house, right? With any time you want, any room that I want, I can open Sacred Mountain or pine or any of the oils that I want and really create the experience of bringing the beauty of nature into my space. We can do it in our cars. We can do it, you know, as we're calming our little ones down for bed. It's so fantastic. And I also like to think, okay, so one more warm-up exercise before we jump into what I'm going to talk about. How many bottles, and this is just off the top of your head, you don't have to go do an inventory. How many bottles of oil do you have in your house right now? This is a get to know you exercise because so many, right? Whether you've got 5 or the kit, you know, 10, 12, maybe you've got 100 or more, maybe you've got 80, you know, okay, yes, yeah, oh, yeah, exactly. All different numbers. I love thinking about how much how big would your garden have to be in order to grow all of the botanicals that are in all of the bottles of oil? So anybody have lavender with them right now? In that tiny bottle of lavender, there's 27 square feet of lavender plant material blossoming in one 15 milliliter bottle of oil. That's so incredible. So if you've got, 3-4 bottles of lavender in your stock, you've got a huge garden. I love thinking about these kinds of things because I am, in fact, obsessed with essential oils. Yes, I'm a clinical herbalist. I work with plants in a clinical setting, but I also am an educator. And I'm obsessed with essential oils. I'm obsessed with the magic really that's in these bottles. And so it's my job, my privilege that it's my job that I get to travel the world teaching people what it is that they have in their hands when they're holding a bottle of Young Living essential oils. So my name is Leslie Lewis. I am a clinical master herbalist, and my job title is the Senior Director of Global Training and Education for Young Living Essential Oils. Let's take one more deep inhale before we jump into class time. You know what else? So we can smell, nature, we can smell the botanicals, of course. Can you smell the sunshine if you've got a really good imagination? Can you smell the rainfall? There's one more thing I'm going to point out to you that you're smelling that you maybe haven't thought of already. You're smelling the legacy left to us by D. Gary Young. He was the founder of Young Living Essential Oils. And so as I talked to you tonight, Lisa mentioned a little bit that I did get to work with Gary, but my intention, I think it's important we set an intention together with our time that we have. My intention is that I hope I can share something with you tonight that helps you moving forward, that you'll never see a bottle of oil the same way again. That no matter what you're looking at, whether it's Young Living essential oil or someone else's oil, you will know exactly what it is you're looking at, what the value is, and what the differences are. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into sharing my screen. Lisa, are the subtitles okay? Do I need to click on anything? Give me a thumbs up if we're good. I'm going to jump into sharing a PowerPoint with you guys. But I do encourage you to please put your questions into the chat box. We will have a little bit of time at the end. I'll try to save some time to be able to share with, answer some questions and spend some time with you that way. So we'll get straight into the Young Living story. It is so important to me that people understand Gary Young, because I really feel like the more you understand and the more you know about Gary, our founder, the more you understand Young Living. It's a little bit of, I don't know how long all of you have been with Young Living. Maybe some of you are a little bit older, have been with the company for a long time. Some of you may be pioneers. I would love to hear in the comments how many of you actually got to meet Gary and work with him and talk with him. Maybe you saw him at events or you got to hear him speak at an event, because he really was an electrifying individual, very, very unique. But I think that the more you understand Gary, who he was, why he was doing what he's doing, slowly you're able to make more sense of the company that we're all a part of and associated with. So I'm going to start with a little bit of his legacy, his story, and where he came from. So Gary Young was raised in rural Idaho. In the United States, Idaho is kind of considered, in most states, you go to New York, you go to California, you talk about Idaho, and people generally associate it with the middle of nowhere. Just wilderness, a lot of farmland, not a big city, not super sophisticated. They don't have a subway system and like all the fancy restaurants. It's very rural, very green. He grew up there on a farm, and his parents they grew wheat and they grew alfalfa, they grew beans and different things like that. So he was raised actually in a very modest way. His family did not have a lot of money, but he wasn't really into the fanciness of big cities. His dream was to be a logger, to live in the high country, in the wilderness, surrounded by trees, surrounded by forest, and cut down trees or log to be able to make a living. That was his dream. He was only 18 years old when he packed up his red Mustang, drove to Canada up north, and was actually granted 320 acres. That is a lot of land. So he was granted this land as part of a homesteading project by the government. So the government would give people these big plots of land. They could live there for free. All they needed to do was clear a certain amount of trees. So they'd have to cut down the trees to log them. And that's how they would exchange for the land, because as the trees were cut down, they could be used as timber, they could be used to create development in the cities, but then the land could also be used and developed. So that was his job. And he was thrilled. At such a young age, he was living his dream until there was a logging accident. So he was in his early 20s when he was actually in a logging accident where he lost the use of his legs. Which, if you can imagine, he's a cowboy. He likes to live in the wilderness. He wants to be very independent. He was very independent. But at that time, he lost his freedom. In those days, it wasn't the way that it is now. When you are confined to a wheelchair, the world is essentially closed to you at that point in those days. It's much easier now to get around if you're in a wheelchair now, but in those days, it was not that way. He could not live on his own in the wilderness. He could not take care of himself on his own because of this handicap. And so it completely changed the trajectory of his life. He worked with medical doctors, and they told him that he would never be able to use his legs again. It was just time to accept the fact, accept the reality that this was his new life. And I'm gonna check and see if any of you met Gary. If you knew Gary, you know that no means nothing to him when it comes to reaching his goals, reaching his dreams, and making his dreams a reality. Thank goodness he didn't listen to the Western medical doctors. He thanked them for their advice, and he began searching other ways and other methods and modalities to bring himself back. And I want to just pause there and ask if that sounds like any of you. I've found in my time with Young Living that Young Living tends to attract a certain type of people who have these attributes and characteristics in common with Gary Young that maybe, let me just ask you, we all have a plan in our lives. Has it ever happened to you that you had a plan, you had a goal, maybe even you started to live that dream, and then something outside of your control happened that completely changed everything? This happens to a lot of us. If it hasn't happened to you yet, maybe your turn is still coming. But it's a common theme in the human story that you think you know what you want and you think you know one thing, and then everything changes because of something beyond your control. What's unique about Gary is that he changed this tragedy into an opportunity to expand his mind, an opportunity to learn beyond what he currently had available to him. And that's what he did. He traveled the world. He worked with medicine men and healers of many different traditions, many different cultures, and began to learn that there's a lot more to wellness and well-being than just, Western medicine, which is all he really had access to in Idaho. So through that adventure, through that study, that's how he discovered essential oils. He never said that oils were the only thing that cured him, but he said they were, he learned many different therapies. He did many different things. And it was several years before he finally had some movement in one foot. But as soon as that happened, that was more than the Western doctors told him was possible. So when that happened, he knew that he needed to continue. And because of that, he found essential oils, he found the benefits to wellness and well-being, and that changed his life. He dedicated the rest of his life to studying and learning all about essential oils. And so that's a little bit about Gary Young, why he founded Young Living. He is considered the father of the modern essential oil movement because Here you can see him in this photograph. He's a little bit older. He's actually in the Ningxia wolfberry bushes there. But because he began to study so fervently oils in a clinical setting, in a scientific setting, but also in the growing fields, he studied every aspect of what it requires to make high quality oils. Because when he came back to the Western world, there were no essential oils that were as pure and potent as the ones he had experienced in different cultures around the world. There were none available to consumers. So he came back to the United States. The only oils, essential oils available were for perfume or flavoring. That was it. There were not available for purchase at a high quality. They were only the lower quality oils used just for the smell or just for flavoring. And so that's why he decided, okay, I need to learn how to do this initially for himself. He didn't plan it as a business. He knew that he needed, if he was going to maintain his vitality and his well-being, he knew that he needed the same high quality that he had been using, but it wasn't available in the stores, wasn't available in the markets. And so he had to do it himself. Luckily, he was a farmer, and so he understood how to grow things. He studied for many years with the top experts in the essential oil industries around the world. And because of his efforts, that put him at the frontier of essential oil science as he began to discover the real potential and uses of essential oils and blending those essential oils together into blends. So sometimes I just can't believe like how much he accomplished in his life. The science of essential oils had not really been studied to the same depth and to the same level until Gary Young came along. And really what we see now in the industry, which is now a huge industry, was really started in the modern movement era. You know, oils have been used anciently, but in this modern era, Gary Young was really the first one in the Western world to give it the scientific attention and to really study the benefits and the uses of essential oils. So not only did he study the science of, you know, what do oils do? How do they work? What's the difference between what he would call a junk oil and a pure quality oil? What's the difference? What makes one different from the other? What makes one more effective than the other? That's what he was really interested in. And he also became a real student of how to distill essential oils. So he was a farmer. He knew how important it was that the quality of the soil was very good. The quality of the seeds was very good. All of those things. He understood growing. But to get an oil out of the plant that is a high quality, it really takes quite a bit of skill to do that. There are many inexpensive ways to do that. There's a lot of cheap ways to get a whole lot of oil out of a small amount of plants, but the quality of the product at the end is very low. And so Gary studied how to distill, and many people, distillers around the world, say that he elevated essential oil distillation to the level of an art. Here in this photograph, you can see Gary Young standing at the top of one of the cookers for steam distillation. I hope each and every one of you gets a chance to go to the farms and see this process. It smells incredible when you're inside those rooms with the cookers going. But he's gazing down in this picture into one of the big distilling cookers where the oils are distilled. He holds hundreds of patents for the equipment and machinery involved, not just with farming and harvesting, but also with distillation, because he was a pioneer in the industry. So we're very lucky to be a part of Young Living. That's one of the oldest and the home of really the father of modern essential oils. So as I said, he traveled the world. These are some pictures of some of his adventures, traveling the world, learning from different people. And one of the things I really think was very cool about Gary, he knew so much, but he never seemed like he put himself above people, if you know what I mean. Like, for those of you who've met him, most of you can probably agree, if you've been in the room with Gary and he's talking, you know, giving a presentation or something like that, his energy can fill an entire stadium. But if he's talking to you, if he's just talking to you, you feel like you're the only person in the room because he is that focused. And it doesn't matter what your job is. Many of the employees here in Utah got to work with him, meet with him. And, you know, whether you're a phone agent who just answers the phones or packing and shipping at the warehouses or farm workers, when he's talking to you, you feel like you're the CEO or the most important person in the room because he never put himself above other people. He always treated everyone as they were equal. And I don't want to make it sound like he was some kind of angel by any means, because he was also a farmer. I don't know if you know any farmers, but they are often very tough and very direct to the point, you know, no sugarcoating on things. And so it was true that in many cases, he had a vision for the company. And if you were, you know, an accountant or a lawyer or someone with the company, and your focus was just to make money, or if your focus was not one with his purpose for the company, then he would fire you. That's also a very common Gary Young truth, that he only wanted to attract people to the company who had the right kind of heart and the right kind of intention with the movement of getting the highest quality essential oils possible to everyone in the world. And so when I found Young Living, it was really an incredible experience for me to be able to meet him and work with him and talk with him, because I could see that his intentions were pure. And many people around the world, as you can see in these photos, many of the people around the world did business with Gary Young and wouldn't do business with other Westerners. They could tell there was something different about him. They could tell that he really cared honestly about the earth, about the product, and about getting the benefit of the product to the people. It wasn't about him. So just to recap a little bit of the story, he started Young Living over 20 years ago. It's coming up on 26 years next year. So he started it with a homemade essential oil distillery. He welded it himself. He put, you know, that big cooker that he was standing on top of, he built Young Living with his two hands. He built the farms, he built the distilleries, and he built the corporation. He put everything together himself because he cared so much about the quality and the intention, and he knew that things had to be right. They couldn't be the way that, you know, other corporations were, or we'd get the same results that other corporations got. And so if you understand that, then it makes a lot of sense when you look at Young Living today, that it is a completely different energy. It's a completely different structure in some cases, in some of our departments, than a traditional corporation. And that's because of who founded the company. We've grown quite a bit. And I want to share with you, before I share the conclusion of the story, because I don't want to leave you on a cliffhanger, I just want to take a quick break to share with you guys a video. I hope most of you have seen this video, but if you haven't, I love showing this video because it's about knowing your roots. It's a quick recap summary of what I've shared with you about Gary Young. And I love this video because Gary's oldest son is in this video and plays him. I'll play the video for you and I'll just kind of chime in when you see his oldest son, Jacob, playing him. Oh. Okay, looks like I'm having a little struggle with the video share, so I'm going to show it to you on YouTube. Don't worry, we did a little rehearsal ahead of time just in case. We're like, okay, what if it doesn't play? Well, don't worry, we've got a backup plan. I'll share my screen with you on YouTube. Okay. Okay, Lisa, will you give me a thumbs up that the audio is playing okay and the video is playing?
Audio is playing, but not the video.
Oh no, okay. Technical struggles. Hold on, you guys. Let's try. Oh, I know. I'll share this screen.
Tunggu sebentar ya Ibu-Ibu. Oke, go ahead Leslie.
Okay.
Told you he's too big for you. Hey, good luck. He'll be back.
There's a chance he may never walk again.
Being called again. Told you he's too big for you. He'll be back.
He may never walk again.
What do you want to do, Gary?
So,
C'est de la lavande de France.
1 month.
excusez-moi.
I'll be there in 1 month.
Ils ne sont pas prêts pour ça. Gary, can you tell us a little bit about...
Sorry, I started playing another video. So I absolutely love that video about knowing your roots, because I believe that essential oils are such a powerful modality for enhancing our lives. We come, however you came to Young Living, maybe a friend shared with you, or family member or something like that. And we use these little bottles and we use the oil and we love them, but it makes such a difference to me to know the story behind how we get these bottles into our houses. Where do they come from? Because even though you can get the benefits and you can experience essential oils for yourself, whether you know the story or not, you see them differently once you understand all of the work that was put into creating these little gifts for each one of our households. I also love that video because every time I watch it, I notice something new. Like, for example, this time I noticed that the guy who was cutting the tree right before the depiction of the accident, he's an actual logger. He actually works at our farm at Highland Flats. I just saw him a little while ago. So he actually, there were lots of people in that video who are actual workers for Young Living, because we are all just as obsessed with these products as you guys are. We all love that Young Living has found us as well. So to get back to, let's get back to what I wanted to share with you next. There we go. So how did the story end? I don't want to leave you on a cliffhanger. By the time I met Gary Young, not only did he not even have a limp, he was walking again, obviously, no limp. There's no way that I could have been able to tell what his past was and how far he had come and what his story was just from meeting him. All I knew was that he didn't have a limp. He had a kind of cowboy strut, sort of swagger going on. This first photograph is, we're at the call center. I started working in member services. We met many years ago, and he would come and visit the call center. We would all get to stop taking phone calls from you guys for just a minute, and he would just tell us how much he appreciated our work. And sometimes he would even cry and get emotional talking about how grateful he was that we would spend our time there, because it was part of a dream coming true. And again, he never made it about him. It was about the reality of being able to make these products available to the whole world. And it was because he would say, it's because of all of us and all of our work. He's like, I can't do it all by myself. I couldn't do this without you. And so I love that he would take time. You know, he was a successful businessman by then, not just a farmer, but he would still come to the call center where we had 700 people working to thank us for our work. This other picture is at convention. I worked for the executive team for 9 months total, working with Lauren Walker and Jared Turner and all the executive team. Gary was there frequently and would stop into my office to avoid going to business meetings sometimes. He would sit in, I had the last office on the hallway before the bathroom. And so sometimes executive meeting day, he would come and pop into my office and just kind of casually close the door and sit down and ask me how I'm doing. We would talk about oils. He would give me suggestions because I'm an oil nerd. So he'd give me ideas about diffuser mixes and different things to do for different things. And we would just be talking and having a wonderful time for a long time. And then eventually I would hear someone coming down the hall knocking on doors. Is Gary in there? No, okay, is Gary in there? And they would eventually find him. They'd say, Gary, you said you were going to the bathroom an hour ago. It's time to get back to the meeting. One thing to note about Gary, he was a good businessman, but that was not his core identity. His core identity, what he would rather be doing, is at the farms or talking with individuals, talking with employees. Sometimes it's hard for me to even believe that he's gone. You know, Gary Young passed away 2 years ago now. And when I go to the building, I still feel like his energy is there. When I go to the farms, I still feel like his energy is there. But it's incredible to me to look at the legacy that he left the world and to realize that we're all a part of that. All of us who enjoy oils, all of us who use them in our homes, who use them on ourselves, who use them in our families and, you know, throughout our lives, we're all a part of his legacy. I just lost an earring. Okay, so we're all a part of his legacy. And I'm going to show you more of the story. Okay, so he was told many, many times by many, many people that he would not be able to be successful, that his dreams were just that. They were just dreams. And so I want to point out to you, take this opportunity to show, and I hope that you can internalize a little bit of this. I don't know each one of you, but I have been told about different dreams in my life that they're impossible. And so when I look at this, it's not just a PowerPoint to me. This slide is an inspiration to me, These are all of the countries where Young Living members live. These are all of the international offices where employees live and work and do, support you guys, the little purple dots all over the world. The global headquarters is actually about 4 blocks that way from where I'm sitting right now in Lehi, Utah. But we also have farms and distilleries, those green dots, all over the world in incredible locations. So I'm going to share with you, let's see if I can get this 25-year video to play for you guys before we move on to some of the numbers of what Young Living looks like today. So, you can go ahead and, as I go through some of these statistics, this is already outdated. This is 23 years of industry leadership. Like I said, we're coming up on 26, but go ahead and chime in on the chat on which one is most important to you, which one is most impactful or the biggest wow for you as I click through these really quickly. So 26 years of industry leadership and none of the other, there's no essential oil company our size or our age out there. Young Living is the original. We're the only one that produces our own products, grows them ourselves with 16, okay, again, now we're at 18 corporate farms, corporate and partner farms, and that number is always growing because we're looking for partners who are able and willing to grow at our standards in order to produce the highest quality oils in the world. We have an incredible science department with 12 independent partner labs and 2 corporate quality labs where we can check and test our products. No other company can say this, by the way, that they can test the products down to the parts per billion to prove the quality and to prove that there is nothing in the oils that shouldn't be there. For example, herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals. Parts per billion means like we could find 1 drop of pesticide in a full swimming pool full of water. That's how specific our scientific testing process is that we go through to ensure the quality of our oils. And we do that because Gary created a system of quality assurance that was there was no industry standard at that time because there was no industry. He was the leader, right? And so he created a system that was up to his own personal standard. And I think that a lot of us can relate to that our own personal standards are probably higher. The standard we hold ourselves to is probably higher than the standards that other people hold us to. Well, there were no other people at the time. So Gary was able to set the standard that we still abide by today at Young Living for quality production of products. We've been exceeding revenue by 1 billion annually since 2015. So by the time I met Gary, he was already very, very successful. And that, not that we care so much about the dollar signs, but that number represents so many households. We are the original essential oil network marketing company. So when Gary did decide to make a business of it, there were many different options of how to get this product to the public. Gary Young and Mary Young decided to make it a network marketing company, meaning direct sales, that the people who purchase and use these products could actually, instead of, you go to the store, you buy a product, you give your money, you get the product, and that's the end of the exchange. They wanted something that could actually be more helpful for the consumer. So for the person who's getting the product, not only do they get the product, but they also have an opportunity to increase their household wealth and their household well-being. So that was very important to them. And that's why they chose to go with network marketing instead of simply a retail model. Over 4 million global members. I can't believe that. And that's you guys. And I can believe it because I've flown around the world. I've met with you. I know how amazing you are. And so that number makes me smile every time because it represents so many wonderful, dedicated, incredible people who are really just sharing Gary's legacy. And more than 3,000 global employees like myself, like Lisa. You guys are so lucky to have her in your market as guiding the education in Indonesia. I think that's a huge part of the success of Indonesia, you and your efforts, and Lisa being so dedicated to producing quality education as well. It's very, very important. And so all of the global employees, we love what we do just as much as you guys love what you do, and we love supporting you in doing that. So that's just a quick look at Young Living by the numbers and 600 plus life-changing products. Now, every market's a little bit different. Every market's got different products and different things are available in different places. But if you take the whole family of Young Living products, everything that's available in the whole world, I live in the US, so there's some products that are not available here. But if you look at everything available everywhere, the whole family of Young Living products is 600 plus products, and we continue to grow. So I'm gonna skip past that and get into, with some of the time that we have left, I want to talk to you about Seed to Seal, because I talked a little bit about the quality standard that Gary produced, and he invented it himself. It did not exist before him. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. It is exclusive to Young Living. And it's so important that we spend just a little bit of time on this because it really is what sets us apart from everyone else in the world. And we're so lucky that we had a visionary founder who created this standard of product creation, because without it, we would be just another company in the whole noise of everything else. So before I get into Seed to Seal, I want to share something very, very special with you. I just told Lisa and the team about it right before we got on this call together, because I was looking for it all day. I was crossing my fingers, hoping I could find something what I found. So I would like to share with you now an actual audio clip of Gary Young teaching. This is really a treat because we have archives and they're not available to the public. They're not available to members either, but I was able to get special permission to share this with you. And I think it's so important because when you hear Gary's voice, you'll be able to hear his level of dedication. You'll be able to hear what he truly cares about and why. And so just to set this up a little bit, he's actually speaking to a group of members. This is a recording that he was teaching at the farm. He was sharing some research that had been done about essential oils that I can't share with you, but he was talking about the benefits that they had discovered in this research study, sharing it with the members, and he paused. So the way that he spoke, I'll just let you listen to it, but he jumps from subject to subject and topic to topic, but he shares a little glimpse into why Seed to Seal quality is so important and why he created it. So I'm going to share that with you now.
In fact, what was discovered 2 years ago was you take lavender oil, and incidentally, it has to be pure lavender oil. This doesn't mean you can just run down to the health food store.
I'm going to start it again.
And buy any old lavender oil that's sold on the market. Because see, in America, people don't understand essential oils. But what they do understand is they understand marketing. And they know how to buy the garbage that's rejected from France and bring it to the United States and cut it with propylene glycol and synthetic constituents like synthetic linalool acetate and put it in the bottle and sell it as essential oil of lavender. And if you don't know the difference, you're just a victim. And so if you go down to a health food store and you see a half ounce of lavender oil on the shelf for $5 to $8 a half ounce, you know that you're getting garbage, because pure lavender oil, you can't buy it in France for that price. So those are things that are very important. And just to give you an understanding, there are 4 hybrids of lavenders, but they're called lavandins. They're not therapeutic for aromatherapy use, but that's what's sold in the United States predominantly, because people here don't know the difference. Our lavender that we produce in France, because we have our own farm in France, we have our own farm in Idaho, we do our own growing. In order to produce the top quality, you have to distill this plant, and that's how the oil is extracted, through steam distillation. It has to be at low pressure, low temperature, and lavender has to be in the chamber for a minimum of 1.5 hours, and better 2 hours. But the commercial distilling in Europe for the perfume industry, they distill lavender oil in 15 minutes at 400 degrees and up to 150 pounds of pressure. And they pump chemicals into the water while they're doing it. So these are things that are very important for you to know, that it's not a matter of just running out to a health food store and buying oils, because the people who are marketing oils predominantly are in it for the money. They don't care about the purity and they haven't taken the time to study. I've spent 11 years in Europe, Israel, and Egypt studying the history, working in the universities. My studies have been in the Medical University of Geneva, Switzerland. I started in 1984. The University of Paris. I have worked in 2 hospitals in Paris. I've studied at the Warwick University, the London University, the University of Cairo, where I've spent 3 years working and studying and traveling, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And so it's been an incredible study. I spent 5 years off and on in southern France learning the ancient art of distillation so we could maintain that purity. Now, let me share with you some of the things that just came out of the Warwick University that I brought back last year on lavender oil.
Can you hear the passion in his voice? I love listening to Gary's voice. I love listening to his classes because you can hear what he really cares about. Can you hear how much he knows about this industry? He knew it inside and out. He knew all of the games that people were playing and the tricks they were doing to make their oils look authentic or smell authentic, but stretching them out and adulterating them and damaging the quality and the purity. He cared so deeply about those things, and he fought every battle to ensure that what we have today is not adulterated. It's 100% pure, and that it can be authenticated as such. He paid the prices. He invested his hard-earned money in the lab equipment and all of the most sophisticated technologies out there to be able to prove that our quality is superior to anything else on the market. He did that because it was important to him. And he did that before it was important to anyone else. And he did it at quite a bit of financial sacrifice. As for that reason, so many people who worked with him in the company weren't quite sure. They didn't know if they could trust his business sense. And it's still a rumor today that Gary wasn't a good businessman, but that's not true. If you ever hear that, I want you to put the smack down on anybody who says that. He was a visionary. He could see what was important long before it was actually important. And because of that, and because of those investments, we continue to be the world leader today. So the Seed to Seal quality standard has to do with the sourcing, where our products are sourced from. Everything from what seeds they're grown from really, really matters. The quality of the soil that they're grown in, the water sources, all of those things that have to do with sourcing the actual product. This science of proving and verifying that they are truly pure and that they are truly the highest quality out there. And then the standards have to do with really maintaining our stewardship of the earth, making sure that the products are created sustainably, but not just the products growing sustainably, but also the farmers, the people who work with the plants. See, Gary was very spiritual as well. And he believed that the quality of the life of the people who cared for your plants, you know, if I'm not being paid properly, I don't get breaks, I'm not getting treated ethically, and I'm caring for the plant, he believed that that hurt and that energy would go into the plant and affect the final product. And so it's very important to him, not just that we took care of the earth, but we took care of the people who are caring for the earth, which makes sense given his experience. And so the last video I'll play for you before we go into questions with our last few minutes is a video that I absolutely love. It talks about our 25 years of stewardship And you'll actually hear the voices. Again, I think it's so important. I believe that voices carry resonance and voices communicate information as well. That's why I was so excited to find that audio clip for you of Gary talking about why the quality is important. But you'll also get to hear the voices of many of our growers from around the world. So I'll play that for you now. And they're talking about the importance of our process and the importance of why, because these are people who work with the earth, so they understand, just like Gary understood the importance of why Young Living does the things the way that we do. Uh-oh, okay, it looks like I'll have to play this one on YouTube for you as well.
We would like to sustain as much as we can that natural beauty and the longevity and continuation of the land. So that's our vision, is just to continue to really appreciate and enjoy what we've got here and to make it last for generations to come.
I believe that agriculture can be part of the solutions for the future.
They were used to produce industrial products here, and all that counted was the cost. We had to change the mentality. Now they are very thankful for what we have done, because they could save in this mountain area that would have totally disappeared without Gary.
If you hurt the land and the land no longer produces, you don't survive. They truly believe that if they take care of the land automatically will take care of you. And you cannot break that cycle, because if that cycle is broken, it not only affects you personally, it affects everything.
You know, I like to help those farmers who are helping themselves. I want to teach them, no, this is how you have to take care of your environment, because your environment will also take care of you. Then everything will be all right.
This work for me is my life. Every day I say thanks to my grandfather, to my father. And I try to come on the fields every day. It's a beautiful world.
Oh, I love that video. It just reconfirms to me how special it is what we do at Young Living, what all of us do, whether we're employees or members. We're all a part of this incredible mission. We're all a part of this incredible vision that was started by someone who took what could have been the greatest tragedy of his life and turned it into opportunity for millions of people, for all of us included, for those of us who enjoy the oils, and those of us who work for the company, and those of us who share the oils with our friends. That's really part of what makes Young Living so special. The legacy of Gary Young lives on and will continue to live on in each one of us as we continue to honor and cherish really that stewardship that we have that's been passed on to us now, by sharing, by appreciating what we have, first of all, and appreciating it enough to use it intentionally with our loved ones, with those that we care about, and to be good stewards and share with integrity, if you will, what it is that we are a part of. And so that's really what I want to end on. I've talked for a little bit too long already. I was going to talk about you guys and how what Gary has started is something incredible in the world, and it attracts really the most incredible people in the world. And that's you guys. Our members, Young Living members, are some of the most incredible people in the world. And I really cherish the relationships, the friendships that I have, the family that I've created through Young Living. And so really just want to end there and encourage you to think about that legacy the next time that you think about a bottle or you use a bottle of essential oils. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you, to the Indonesia team. Sorry for going a little bit over there. But if you do think we still have time for questions, I'll just turn it over to you.
Hi, Leslie. It was so very touching presentation. For me, it's not the presentation. It really is a sharing about Gary and about his legacy. And thank you so much. I think ibu-ibu di sini boleh write down your comment about the sharing. And if you have any question, just type on the chat, and then Ibu Indri will pick some of the question and give it to me so I can answer to Leslie. Okay, the first question, Leslie, that we got here, and meanwhile, ibu-ibu boleh lihat dan boleh silakan komen dan menyatakan seperti apa sharing yang baru Leslie lakukan. So the first one is a question from Ibu Wait ya, saya tadi from Ibu Reni Haza. So it means each oil has different distillation time, right, Leslie? And why is that each oil have different distillation time?
Oh, excellent question. So because all botanicals, all plants are different, just like all people are different. And so what conditions it takes for them to really give their best, to produce the best, is different depending on their makeup and depending on their personality, if you will. And so just like some plants store their oils in different places. Some plants store their oils in the petal or the leaves. Others have it in the roots or the seeds or the bark. You know, every plant in the plant kingdom is incredible. Also obsessed with that. That's why I'm an herbalist. And so every single one is so different what it needs to get the best out of it. Gary dedicated his life to knowing which oils need what in order to give the highest quality yield. I can give you a quick example. Some oils need to be distilled as soon as you cut them. They need to go straight to the cooker to be able to give the best oil. Others need to be cut and lay down on and start to dry out for a few days, some for a few hours. Some plants, after they're cut, will suck all of their oils in order to survive, and then they'll realize they're dying and they'll give a burst of energy and their very best oils right at the finish. And so it takes quite a bit of science, quite a bit of testing, and quite a bit of expertise to know which plants need what in order to be able to give their best. And so that's a long answer to your question, but I hope that helps.
I think that helps, Bu Reni ya tadi yang bertanya ya. And then another question dari Ibu Julius Wijaya about sensitization. What can essential oil cause sensitive to our skin? Would you please elaborate about that, Leslie?
Yes. So
based on your expertise, of course.
Thank you for that question. Just like every plant is different, every person is different. And so sensitivities vary from one person to the next. But there are some that have a general guideline. For example, photosensitivity. If you've ever heard of that, plants and the sun have a very special relationship and they respond to each other differently. Citrus oils are an excellent example of an essential oil that if you put it on your skin and you go into direct sunlight right away, can cause increased sensitivity on the skin. So you always need to check your labels. They will tell you, check your labels. You can check the website, the product guide. It's pretty much posted everywhere, which oils are photosensitive, so should be diffused or should be used diluted, should be used in the evening. Frankincense is a great example. I add that one to my moisturizers. It's wonderful for the skin, but should be diluted, should be used in the evenings. So check your labels, do your research, never be afraid to ask or check the labels and follow the instructions there. Less is more for starting out. Anytime you're using something new, you want to do a quick patch test, read about it, learn about it. I'm a nerd. That's why I'm in education. So I'm always a cheerleader for research and study. Okay.
Okay, another question, Leslie. I hope Ibu Julius Wijaya that explains and it makes sense to you. And also another question comes from Ibu Alba Doyles to everyone. to Leslie, of course. So Leslie, the farmers have to be very well educated, right? Uh, it's not just not like that, but they have to be well educated to grow our farm.
Yes. Yes, our farm managers are very well educated people. You know, Gary believed that love was most important. So if you're working in the fields, you're the ones who are hand weeding, you're working with the seedlings, those things. He just cared that you love your job. He said, everything else we can train you, but you have to love being with the plants. You have to love being in the fields. Those are the people that, and that's why he invites members to come to things like the harvest and planting and things like that, because he knows how much you guys love the product and how much love you can give to the plants. But to be the farm manager, to be the head aggregist or the ones making sure that the soil enzyme composition is correct, they must be very educated. They are oftentimes very highly schooled. And what I love about Young Living, they have laboratories on site at the farms. And so there's a lab tech. Now, my father is a scientist. He's a chemist. And my mother grew up on a farm. So I feel like a lot of times Young Living is like the story of Leslie. I've seen those two happily married, those two halves and how they get along. Gary structured the company so that at the farms, the lab technician is reporting to the farm manager. Usually it would be the other way around, right? The person in the lab coat is more important, but there's no more important. They work together, but the lab tech must respect the farmer's work and the farmers must respect the lab technician's work. And it's so beautiful to see them side by side and on the same site. So rare to see that.
Yeah, agree. Would you please answer 3 more questions? We already picked 3 more questions.
Sure, happy to.
Related to the question previously, Leslie, from Ibu Sarah Enjoy Living Oil. What is your favorite essential oil? And then, do you know the most difficult plant in the process of distillery to become essential oil? The most difficult.
Okay, so 2 very tough questions. Wow, Indonesia, yikes, you guys wake up like this? Seriously? I love it. Okay, so my favorite essential oil, I think that's an impossible question. It's like asking what's your favorite child or something like that. It depends on the day and who's behaving right now. No, it depends on my mood and what I'm using for. I absolutely love white angelica. I love frankincense, I love so many oils, you guys, but those are some that I use every day. The hardest to distill or the most complicated to distill, because they're each individually so specific. When it comes to single oils, I think the one that is the most high maintenance is Melissa. It is extremely high maintenance, like all of the conditions have to be perfectly correct for it to distill properly. It is also very small yield, so it takes several truckloads in those giant cookers to get a very small quantity of oil. And if it lays on the ground, if they're picking it, it lays on the ground, it will give you no oil. Like so high maintenance, 0 oil for you. So Gary actually invented a truck that has a conveyor belt. So it's got a clipper in the front and then a conveyor belt. So the clippings go onto the conveyor belt and go up over the top of the truck and into the bed of the truck so that it never touches the ground. He actually invented some equipment to be able to harvest Melissa properly. So that's one. One of the reasons why you see the price point on that is, yes, it is extremely, we actually as a company, maybe I shouldn't say this, but we lose money on distilling it because of the amount of land that it takes. Think of paying all of the farmers, all of the field workers to take care of Melissa for long enough and then harvest it. And then we only get a very tiny amount of oil. But the reason why we still sell that oil is because Gary Young wanted people to be able to access the benefits of Melissa. And so it really, like I can only say it so many times, but really it isn't about the money for him. It's about getting people the benefits of the products.
Thank you, Leslie. That's why Melissa is very expensive, as well as us. We have a very, very expensive patient about it. And also, lastly, there's a question from Ibu Novita Enggi. Leslie, may I know who is continue Gary's vision and mission in the company to make sure all still holding on Gary's passion will long last?
Oh, I love that question because 2 years ago when Gary passed away, it was I can't say it was a shock, it was a heartbreak. You know, many of us employees were just crying that day. Even though he lived a very full life and he didn't waste a second of his life, it was still just like, oh, I can't believe we are going forward without, you know, our leader. But I believe in the power of Gary's intuition. I believe that he knew that his time was coming, and he spent many years actually ensuring that the right people were in places to be able to make the right decisions at the right time. So many of you know that I worked for Lauren Walker in the supply chain, and she's no longer with the company. And Jared Turner is with the company still, but in a different position. And when you see these people who are put in high positions, please know, and I get to see this every day, so it's a little easier for me, but I want to share with you the confidence that they did what they needed to do in those positions at that time, and they have handed the baton to be able to continue that legacy going. Mary Young, Gary's wife, is very active in Young Living. I can ride my bike over to the building and see her car there almost every day. She is making sure that the legacy and the vision continues and that there are no shortcuts. Dr. Mike Book is the head of the science pillar of Young Living, and he worked in the labs with Gary for many years. He understands seed to seal. He understands the science and making sure that we're continuing our research, that we're not stopping what we were doing, we're continuing the momentum. And he's the head of the D. Gary Young Research Institute and partnering with incredible labs around the world, continuing the research, continuing the mission. And then, of course, there's all of you who are making sure that you're sharing in a way that has integrity and you're using products with integrity, that you're not wasting them or treating them the same as you would as a low quality. And when you're talking to people, you're sharing what you've learned personally about these oils. That is continuing Gary Young's legacy. So the only way to stop this legacy would be to stop all million of us from doing what we do every day.
Thank you for that, Leslie. Last question, of course, because I promised you only 3 more questions. So, Ibu, I'm so sorry. Leslie cannot answer all of the questions. Ibu Indri already helped me to pick the best 5 questions. So, the last one from Ibu Alba, how do Young Living make blend oils? Blend each single oils together or distill the plants needed together?
Very good question. And this was actually one that was kind of going in my mind. So I'm glad you picked this one, Lisa, when the question was, what's the most difficult to distill? I'm like, well, a lot of the blends are very complicated. So Gary was very gifted at many things that would take, it's so rare to see one person become an expert and a master in so many different areas. To blend essential oils is a mastery and an art. To formulate oil blends, get them to blend together synergistically, it's not like what I do in my diffuser where I'm like, okay, a sprinkle of this, a sprinkle of that, a sprinkle of this. It's much more complicated to create a blend. The oils are distilled, always distilled as singles, because each plant needs something different, remember? Some of them are steam distilled, some of them are cold pressed, some of the, each plant is distilled they need different things. So once they have been distilled to a high quality of each one of the singles, then to put the blend together is a completely different art that Gary also mastered. To know how to blend what oils together in the right quantities. And then this is something that a lot of people don't know about creating a blend. You can't it's not like making a recipe for cake where it's like, okay, 5 drops of this. It's not like a diffuser blend recipe. 2 drops orange, 3 drops lemon, 4 drops, I don't know, cinnamon or something. Some of the oils must be matched together first. what sequence it goes in, how long they sit together before they can be introduced to the other oils. The process of creating a blend is very complex. It depends on science, but also a lot of intuition. Our formulation process is very highly clinical, very highly scientific, but also very spiritual and intuitive. And Rex Kidman is one who studied with Gary Young in the labs. He's an employee who's been with Young Living also 25 years. And Gary passed to him the tradition of how to blend and formulate, along with Dr. Mike Book as well. But it's a very, very special gift and talent to be able to formulate and blend the oils once they've been distilled.
Thank you so much for your sharing and for the answers. And I think I have one last question for you. It's from me.
Okay, yes, of course.
So Leslie, and Ibu-Ibu sekalian, Leslie comes from global, right? And you can see the growth of Young Living. You can also see the growth of each market in Young Living.
Yes.
So now, would you please share with us, what do you think about our market? And you can see about the growth. You maybe also have some I don't know, some message or some suggestion or some hope for us, because now we are the one who should pass the Gary Young legacy. It's not only us in the company, Ibu-Ibu. It's not only me. It's not only Leslie. It's not only the employee, but all of us here as the member of Young Living. We are the ambassador of Gary Young legacy. So Leslie, what do you think about the Indonesian market, and what kind of message do you want to, or what kind of hope do you want for us as the Gary Young ambassador?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. And of course, for the invitation to be here and spend some time with you all. I really miss being able to travel and be with you in person. But I think, Lisa, I want you to know that when you invited the global team to have some time to share with your members, we were jumping up and down in our meeting. Like, oh my gosh, Indonesia is on fire. You know, at corporate, you guys are all people are talking about right now. Like, you are the kid that's making the parents so proud and the other kids so jealous right now because of your growth, because of your spirit, because of your energy, because through challenges that we all go through at Young Living. We're not a perfect company by any means. Just like Gary Young, I don't want to whitewash things or overcolor it. Nobody is a perfect person. We're not a perfect company. We have a lot of challenges, but the spirit of Indonesian market is an inspiration to the globe, to all of the markets, because of your growth, because of your passion, because you understand, because you get it, what we are doing here and what the purpose of this mission is, the importance of it, that, you know, being prosperous and being financially successful, that's a side effect of the importance of the work that we have to do here. So it really is my honor to spend time with you and to feel of your spirit. I will be more charged up tomorrow just because of the time that I've spent with you, and my whole team that will be sharing with you in the future is really excited, a little jealous that I get to go tonight, but really excited to spend time with you as well. So really, that is what's in my heart to share with Indonesia, that it's been so fantastic to watch your growth. I was there for the open of the market to see what has transpired and what you've done with these tiny seeds that were planted and have grown just into a beautiful garden that is an inspiration to the whole rest of the world.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. All of us also very thank you for the sharing and for the inspiration. We are all very inspired and full of energy, and we are now ready, right, Ibu-Ibu, to pass on the Gary Young legacy, because it is our job, it is our duty. So we are not here only for the business. We are not here only for the product, but we are here to pass Gary Young legacy. So,
Lisa, thank you so much. Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry, I almost forgot that I wanted to put a quick plug for something that is very special about Indonesia, that I've never heard of this happening anywhere else in the world, but that coming up soon on Indonesia's Instagram page,
Oh ya.
You'll actually be able to hear from the employees, from those who work in the office and do what they do, sharing why they love Young Living so much. And I think that is so cool that your team, your corporate team, is partnering to share their hearts and to share their love and to share their passion with the field. I can't wait to watch those posts and to be a part of that sharing energy, because that's really at the core of who we are.
Thank you to encourage all of us about this. So itu pesannya Leslie, ibu-ibu, tunggu di Instagram Young Living Indonesia, sudah mulai story setiap hari akan ada employee dari Young Living Indonesia yang akan bercerita kenapa sih kami mencintai Young Living Indonesia. Jadi bukan hanya member ternyata yang mencintai Young Living, tapi kami dari perusahaan, setulus hati kami juga sangat jatuh cinta pada perusahaan ini. Dan itulah kenapa kami akan selalu memberikan yang terbaik untuk Anda, karena kami juga mencintai Anda dan perusahaan ini. Terima kasih semuanya. Thank you everyone. Thank you Leslie. Hope to see you soon again on Thursday, because at Daily will be there to share with us at 7 p.m. Jakarta time. 7 p.m. ya ibu-ibu. And join with us to understand about the stress connection and how we can overcome this. Okay? With Young Living Essential Oil. Bye semuanya.